Took a nasty fall, her shoulder.
Anyone you want us to call? I need to...
No phone calls.
About this time last year, I sent you a message that you probably don't remember, but I specifically said, hey, I don't want to jump the gun. I know season 2 hasn't technically been announced yet, but you guys need to do an episode. I'm reading a lot about ICE coming into hospitals and how people are scared. And I think that has great dramatic possibilities, and it's an important story. And you said, great idea. Tell me about tackling that subject.
You were hitting the nail on the head as we all looked into a crystal ball and tried to see where the country was going to be 10 months later. And you weren't alone in writing us and saying that this was an area that we should pay attention to. It was a lot of different inroads and attempts were discussed in the writing room on how to crack this and how to come at it. Ultimately, we were very pleased with our take. And then it became a calibration of, how much, what is off screen, what's on screen. And, we shot a lot more than we show. And it became a discussion about discretion and sometimes less being more. And it was a really thoughtful conversation as we all, and this is way before.
Yeah.
As we all weighed the significance of what we were doing with this storyline. And then, of course, Minneapolis happens, and it almost seems disproportionate the other way, So I'm glad you find it impactful. I'm too close to it to be objective of where it, could have been, should have been, needs to be. But I'm glad we addressed it, and I'm glad that it's got resonance, and I think it's a super important topic to talk about.
I feel like it was the right character, to do this for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, I just think Nurse Jessie is kind of a rogue and kind of a tough guy, and he is the kind of person that would throw himself out in front physically, of a person, of an ICE agent or whoever, to stand up for a patient. But also, as Noah pointed out, and some of the writers have mentioned to me, they really thought hard about who to throw into harm's way in that scene. And, they made the point, and rightfully so. It was kind of interesting and surprising that they used a white cisgendered male, to do that storyline. It was a little bit unpredictable. And I think, Noah said it, if we did it a different way, it would have been like a hat on top of a hat. We're not trying to force everything down people's throats all the time, but this is just sort of showing that, these kind of entanglements with the law and, they can happen to anyone. It's not always what you expect. It's not only the families and the young and the weak and the minorities, this stuff is affecting everybody. Of course, a lot of those people I just mentioned get it the worst, but, this trickles down to all different facets of society. And I think that's what we were trying to show on this episode.
It felt harrowing, I think, for everybody, including the actors playing the ICE agents. The whole thing felt like deeply uncomfortable, and difficult and wrong and complicated, and then we just all went through the motions.
Walking onto set, we're walking into the set that is a hospital. And Juju and I are dressed, very differently from everybody else. Juju has a presence about him that, you just know when he's in the room. We're walking in decked out in military gear, and everybody is staring at us as they would in a hospital setting, and this would happen. And I'm not used to getting that type of vitriol kind of directed at you, even in a performance aspect.
Yeah, it was hard. Fiona was like one. Because my character, as you saw, it's a dick. So it was one of those things where I was like, oh God, I gotta say that. And Fiona was like, I'll have to give you a hug after this take because I could see like just pulling on you. I'm like, I'm really. And Joselle got to kind of play the good cop in this one, so yeah. I had to be the asshole here.
God, it was very intense. Shooting those scenes, you've got stunts. We're not a show that usually does stunts, does that kind of thing, but yeah, it was very different, and everybody was being very, I think it requires sensitivity, and I think everybody gave it that space. I think the Pitt is about what it is to really be a healthcare worker, And it's just holding up a mirror to whatever's happening in America right now.
The second that I got it and I read the sides, I was already taken in by this character. And I just fell right into it. So you have this individual who is not American, and just physically feels like a target. And even though right now, speaking from Ramona's perspective, I am a US citizen, but still, I will not lie. I've traveled around with my passport just in case.
I'm going to be really honest with you. Playing an ICE agent, had it not been the Pit, I probably would have turned it down. I mean, I don't have too many hard lines as far as what I'll play. But whatever pendulum side of the fence you fall on with the whole kind of climate that America's in right now, it was something that was just very kind of touchy to me and something I don't necessarily agree with. But, this is, we're artists and it's our job to tell a story.
I play a lot of military, a lot of police officer, law enforcement, that kind of role. So when I saw ICE agent, I wasn't necessarily surprised that it was that type of role, but the fact that it was ICE agent, it gave me a little pause because, yeah, there's a lot going on right now in the U.S. with a lot of controversy. Let's put it that way. And when I saw ICE agent, I was like, oh God, how am I going to explain this to all my friends and whatnot? Because the community I'm from San Diego, right next to the border. Mostly everybody that I grew up with was immigrants. My family's immigrants. I'm in Los Angeles now. And
I'm a child of an
yeah,
immigrant.
exactly. And Los Angeles is a huge immigrant population. So everybody that I know, everybody I grew up with were immigrants. And when I have to say, hey, I'm an ICE agent,
I was just telling people I was a federal agent. I was
Yeah, yeah.
a federal agent. I didn't even say ICE. I said federal agent.
Yeah. It takes a little bit of explaining if you go the ICE agent route, So, but again, like Juju said, it was the Pit, and I knew it was a reputable show. I knew they do things in good taste. I know they take a lot of care in how they portray certain characters in certain situations because they know they're broadcasting to the entire country and not just a subset. So in that regard, I was like, okay, I think what I can do here is do justice to the character and trust they will do justice to the writing and to the portrayal of these characters. I was talking to Valerie, one of the writers or the writer for that episode.
Yeah.
During lunch one day, and I remember that she was saying that she had nights where she could not sleep because of the anxiety of this episode of the show, because it was such a controversial topic, and there were so many sides of it, or very, very polar opposite sides to this thing, and she wondered if she was telling the right version of the story, right? Because as you see, both of us are minorities.
Yeah.
And what is the version of that story we are telling, right? Are we saying telling the story of two white guys doing it? Is that two on the nose? Is it one white guy and one minority, and we have a magical minority, right? Or white savior? Like there's so many different ways to tell this story, and this is the way they went about it: is two minorities. And she was tossing and turning about, is this the right version of the story to tell?
There was a lot of attention to this plot line in a lot of areas. Yeah.
It really jumped out at me, not only because I've been thinking about this, but I literally got this screener in the middle of when I was covering Sundance Film Festival, and it was the week of the Alex Preddy shooting.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, I want to talk to somebody about this.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
as luck would have it, I went to a premiere that night, and who should be standing a few feet away, but Issa Briones.
Oh, cool.
And so I got to talk to her, and she mentioned this was a plot that was really important to everyone.
Yeah, it felt that way. Yeah.
I think that Cassie McKay is really a perfect character to put into this situation because I feel like she's such an empath, and you can tell that she's right away like wanting to get more involved in this situation and do what she can to try and get Pranita out of it. What are your thoughts on how the character is feeling?
I think the space that Cassie occupies is as somebody who had a lot of twists and turns before medical school. So a lot of times doctors will, be very good in high school and then go into a good college and then a good medical school and then a residency. And Cassie, dealt with addiction and a lot of wrong choices and getting pregnant early. And then the whole thing has happened later. So what that brings is a little bit more intuition on what it feels like to be um, in difficult circumstances because she's been there. You saw that a lot with the with unhoused Sherry in season one, and then intuition and empathy. Yeah,
Dr. Javadi does figure into this plot. Not only is she one of the doctors working on Pranita, but she's also the one who pulls out her phone instantly and records everything, which I love that. What do you think it says about her character that that's her immediate reaction?
God, I think there's a big storyline about social media this season for Javadi. And I think her being like the young woman, the character who's like the youngest woman, and she's very like Gen Z, very just exactly like the other girls. I think that that was definitely a storyline that I knew would get people would have their biases about her, and they would be like, oh, she's like this young girl on TikTok, and use that as a way to like dismiss her almost. But I really wanted to show that all of her like qualities that are typical young girl qualities don't negate her intelligence and her all of her positive characteristics. They are positive characteristics. To be like other young girls, that's a positive thing. And so I think her pulling out her phone and doing something in this moment, trying to find Pranita, trying to like, Nurse Jessie, like trying to have an impact there, like the way we do activism between generations is so different. And it's all good. Like there's no right or wrong way to do activism. There's no right or wrong way to try to make change or have a positive impact. We're all just doing what we can with the tools that we have. And so I think that I'm, very, very excited for people to see how all the different characters react in that moment.
What I always think about is, there's a lot of characters on the Pit. There's like a lot of different, and from the beginning, that was the point. And Noah told me that right up front. This is going to be like a Robert Altman picture. It's like a whole, it's a whole web of people. And I think that's what's so great about the show. There was the stuff that was on the page for my audition, which is, quite frankly, there was more juice in that audition scene than we've really seen in 2 seasons with my character. But I was able to take some of those little elements that they provided in the audition scene and expand on them in my own, creative imagination. And I think that's what starts to bring those characters more to life. I always think of Jesse as being one of these real senior nurses. He's got a lot of experience in the trauma bay. And I think he's a little rough around the edges, but when push comes to shove and a patient's really in trouble, they're bringing in Jesse to sort of, lead the charge.
I looked at it from a perspective as Russo, something that he's passionate about and truly believing in the cause.
Yeah, so very similar approach for me is someone that wanted to do this job because he believed in the ultimate goal of it. It was to make things right in terms of getting the bad people out, right? But with all the stuff that is happening, where there is this controversy of people having an abuse of power and such. My character's point of view, the way I approached it, was he was trying to be the good from the inside, and trying to make a change from the inside and doing things the right way, so to speak. And that's, you could see that's what my character tries to do, is he's trying to do things that still align with his job, at the same time treat people like humans. And a lot of the times in our scenes, especially when we're talking to oh man, what was the patient's name, Juju? We were with
our detainee.
Yeah. She was Pranita. Oh, she was amazing. I loved her. I loved working with her. And she made it really, really easy for me to humanize that aspect because she was such a sweet person.
So season 1 was really focused on the healthcare workers and their experience. And this season 2 is as well. But I feel like there's a little bit of an added focus on empathy and dignity for the patients. And there's just a lot of hitting the point of treating them with dignity again and again. The character of Howard, I love that plot. Was there a conscious choice at any point to put maybe more focus on the patients this year?
in some ways we're still figuring out how to make this show.
Uh-huh.
When we started, we wanted to make it such a practitioner-centric show that photographically we weren't going to even cover the patients to a large extent. We were really going to focus just on our physicians. And then when we started to cut the shows, we realized that unless you have a sense of who the patient is, you're shortchanging the emotional value of the impact on the practitioner. So we had to recalibrate the way we aesthetically photograph the show to bring that character that's on the bed into 3 dimensions so that the practitioner can have an appropriate reaction. And then it just sort of evolved to, well, these characters are all impacting our characters, or these patients are all impacting our characters. So the more 3 dimensional and specific the situation we place them in, the more we can use that as a catalyst for our own micro arcs for our characters. And then, I'll confess, I think as shows go on, writing staffs in general tend to get more invested in writing the guest star characters than the regular characters. The regular characters tend to get a little bit more functionary around the exciting new characters that you could create who are bringing in a new storyline. And it requires a lot of discipline to keep the focus, on your main characters and have them always be serviced by your guest star, but not the other way around. It's a tricky balance. I don't think you're wrong to see the emphasis be placed there. I think it's a byproduct of wanting everybody to feel seen and heard this year, not just the people that work in the hospital, but I think the patients who are coming in that are finding themselves in this new and widening gap between making too much to apply for one kind of coverage and not enough to apply for another, and having to make heartbreaking choices between medication and rent or heat and food. Like, that's something that I think is worthy of talking about. Or if you're an undocumented person who needs medical attention, what the risks are of going to a hospital now, that's worthy of attention. So it's not just issues facing the practitioners post-COVID that we want to deal with. It's becoming more of a collective, everybody's in the pit together kind of sitch.
I think the thing about the pit is that it's like timely and therefore timeless. Like, I hope that it really is something people could come back and rewatch again and again and again as like a capsule of what it is to be working in American healthcare right now. And I think that specificity is really what people are connecting to. I would love to see, I think there's so, we talk about mental health, and we talk about mental health outcomes for physicians and the rates of suicides for physicians compared to other people, and also we've talked a lot about biases also that healthcare workers have. I think for me, I really want, particularly with Javadi, I want her to not be perfect. I want her to not be competence porn. I want a medical student to be able to tune into the pit on their worst day of med school and watch Javadi and feel better about themselves. I really want her to be messy and trying, getting up, failing, and getting up and trying again. And I think I've been really lucky to get that. And so I wanted to find new ways for her to try and fail and to be, I think that working in healthcare asks so much of people, like, to be so emotionally aware, to be so emotionally available to your patients, but also 100% compartmentalize between them second by second, to not let any of the deaths you see or the trauma you see affect you mentally, because if you do have poor mental health outcomes, you might not be able to work anymore. We are so much about physicians, and I really want to see the toll it takes on them in different ways. And I want to show solutions for how to get out of those situations. I really want the pit to help. I just want to help.
What was your experience like working with the other actors, Fiona Dourif and Noah and Ned Brower?
It was bliss. It was just first of all, to be on that set. I came home, I told my husband, I told my agent, my manager, everyone, the incredible synchronicity everyone has on that set. You felt it right away. And even Noah Wiley, when I first met him, he was nice enough to compliment my audition, and he shared that with me right there, one-on-one. And it was a very comfortable, peaceful, safe surrounding.
Noah said something really cool to me on set. You know, it was like first day of shoot, maybe second day of filming. Um, and you know, I was kind of joking, you know, we're doing the scenes, and I'm kind of just like, oh my gosh, like, you know, this is, whew, this is a hard one to get through or whatever. And he said something that was really cool, and I kind of will approach that now to anything I do, especially if the character's kind of more on the dark side or however you want to look at it. But he said, you know, it's because of what is going on in our country right now with ICE and everything. He said, we're getting, as artists, as actors, we're we're able to, however side you look at it, right? What if you're pro it, you know, if you're for it or against it, but as artists, we're a vessel to tell a message, you know, and it's our job to tell this story to the world, you know. And when he said that to me, and I'm not doing it just, I mean, he, you know, Noah, he said it in such a poetic way, but
Yeah,
you
he's
know,
incredible.
oh,
Just
dude, you know,
so eloquent.
he's just such a, and like you got, you know, Giselle, I'm sure you be on different sets, and you know, again, I've been lucky enough as an artist, I haven't had, or an actor, I haven't had a really bad situation on set. I've always been on sets that were, it was pretty good atmosphere, but Noah is just such a good human.
It was a beautiful family feeling. Everyone, and there was a great flow of just how everyone worked. Getting to work with Uta Brisevitz, and pardon me if I'm botching up the name, but she's like a rock star in my eyes. And to get to work with her was also magical. The writer, oh my God.
Chu.
Yes, loved her. And she was also on set. And just everyone. It was a magical experience. And just, I love the camaraderie that everyone, it was a very, even the background, everybody was just so connected.
There's been all this talk, you and George presenting the awards to each other, and we all just want to see you back together. I'm just throwing this out there. Jay Kelly is shooting a movie where he plays an ER doctor during the pandemic, and he has to shadow Robbie for a shift.
Big swing, Gibbs. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it though. I don't not like it.
Yeah, I don't think it would like actually.
You know what's so
play.
funny is that I had this exact same pitch. My one of my favorite shows on TV is Shoresy. I think it's the best show on TV. Like, I wrote them a fan letter basically saying it's about the dirtiest hockey player in history who plays for this terrible team that's in the D League outside of Toronto. The Sudbury Blueberry Bulldogs is the name of the team, and I love it. And I wrote him a fan letter saying, what if I came and played Noah Wiley and I'm shadowing Shoresy on how to be a hockey player for a movie I'm doing, just so that I can shamelessly get on that show. So we could just make this a chain. Everybody could play that same storyline to get on whatever show they want to do. They just play the actor who's trying to study the lead. I'm in.
Of all the different elements from healthcare to acting and music, the music part's really taken up the majority of my time and energy. So yeah, I was in a rock band for a long time with Rooney, traveled the world and toured with the Strokes and Weezer and Lollapalooza and Coachella and did tons of cool stuff. And then started this fun Fleetwood Mac kind of theater show, which we're doing here in Kentucky tonight. So that's been going now for like 12 years. It's kind of like a musical comedy Fleetwood Mac show that's great and super fun. Played with Mark Maron for the last few years. And now been working the last year on this new record. It's more electronic, it's more pop and dance oriented, called Bloodwork.
Yeah.
And it was named after honestly, a doctor gave me the name when we were just starting to work on the album. It's like, I'm not sure what we're going to call it. And one of my favorite ER docs that I work with all the time, she's like, without thinking, she's like, you should call it Bloodwork. It's like, it's a good name. So we've been working on a record for like the past year. We're just getting ready to put out our first couple singles, and we're doing some really exciting collaborations with some really great, well-known musicians from LA. And we're going to start churning out songs and videos. March 19th, we're going to drop 2, and we're doing a remix for a really cool band from New York City. And we have some crazy silicone custom made skull heads that the Pitt special effects makeup helped us get made
Those
in
are
the off
awesome.
season. Yeah, so we're super excited about it. And
In episode 13, Cassie says that she suddenly feels like going to a good horror movie. And I was just curious. So I have two little nephews who are like YouTube critics, and they're just like obsessed with little Easter eggs and references and things.
Yeah.
And that jumped
Yeah.
out at me. And I'm like, was that a Chucky reference, or did you
Well, that line came up on the fly while we were shooting. Dr. Joe Sachs came up with
Yeah.
that line, and it wasn't originally in the script. Yeah, I have a long history of being involved in genre, but also I'm a genre fan. So I think people know what movies I like and what I go to see, and so it's just fun. When you're on a show that shoots for so long, where you get to know everybody really well, and then hopefully goes for multiple seasons, they start writing for you and writing, to you, and writing for your strengths. And so it's been fun.
You've got a better history with it than I do. I was actually I was in what is generally regarded as the worst horror film ever made when I was 14
I
years
bet you
old.
I beat you. There's no way.
I don't know. I was in Troll 2. As one of the title shot of the movie is me as a troll running
I
toward the
love it.
camera. Yeah.
You got to own it. That's great, man.